Before I get started with the story, let me give a shout out to Tawana Cook in the Discord for posting this story in Discord. And this is coming from the Insider, and it was posted January 5th, 2022. The article, or the headline reads, "Companies still aren't hiring black men despite 10.6 million open jobs in the U.S. and it's costing the economy $50 billion. When I read this, it reminded me of a story that I came across, I think last year, where they were talking about how in the entertainment industry, more specifically when it comes to acting and movies and television, where they were kind of doing the same thing when it came to black people, and how there were certain roles that weren't being given out, or black actors weren't given the quality of work that they were seeking, and it was costing Hollyweird millions of dollars. Now, keep in mind, when it comes to Hollyweird, it was the blaxploitation era that saved it back in the 70s. That era of black film is what saved Hollywood from tanking. And then, when it comes to comic book movies, the Blade movie is what saved Marvel from going completely bankrupt. And of course, that led to what we have now with the MCU and all that good stuff. Now, fast forward to this, where it says that it's costing the economy $50 billion because they're not hiring black men at the rate that they should. This shows you right here where it says that they need us way more than we need them. And I said before, if they would deflate their ego and cut the checks, I should say, this economy would be booming. But the thing is, they don't want us on the same playing field as them, leveled out, or they definitely do not want or have the fear of us surpassing them. That is probably one of their biggest fears. Like, they will probably go to hell and dwell there rather than do or pay what is owed to us. And that's what you're seeing right here. Like, they're willing to let this economy tank, then give black men jobs. And then you have people who will say, oh, black men don't want to work, we're lazy, we're shiftless, and all types of stuff like that. When you have black men that want to work, but then you come across stuff like this. It's not that black men don't want to work. It's because they're not giving them the opportunity to do so, even if they have the qualifications. This also reminds me of a story I did about Ward 8, which is in D.C., where you had a lot of black people who were qualified to work in construction, but they gave those jobs to immigrants who live in Virginia and parts of Maryland. They didn't even live in the same ward. Some of them didn't even live in D.C. And then they protested, and then they tried to make the black people look like they were the bad guys, and all types of stuff like that. But then when we got a hold of it, we really broke it down, and it completely shut down that person, whoever that person was who posted that up on Twitter, to try to make it seem like black people were mean and the villain, and saying all types of stuff about black people. So this right here is where it's all geared to. Black men want to work, but they're not given the opportunity to do so, which is why you're finding a rise in entrepreneurship. Now I'm going to go ahead and read this article and see what the breakdown is. Despite a nationwide cry for workers, businesses aren't hiring black men, and it's costing the country billions of dollars, according to a new study by the Center for Economic and Policy Research. The unemployment rate for black men remains high, 7.3% in November compared to 3.4% among white men looking for work, according to Labor Department data. Roughly 697,000 black men need employment, even as the country recorded 10.6 million vacant jobs in November. Now, let me pause right there. If y'all remember, I did it was either a video or maybe in a live stream where it was talking about those black farmers down, I forgot what state it was, where they were working. And then what they did was, the people who ran it, they went over and hired some white South Africans to come over here who's probably never worked the land before, and decided to give them the jobs that the black farmers were doing by forcing them out in ways of reduction in pay, or just forcing them out altogether. Mind you, the black farmers already worked the land. They know the land. So basically, the white South Africans were cheating. They were working on already, I guess you could say, manicured land. So they didn't even really have to do any work. That's why I said this is literally like modern day slavery 2.0. We do all the heavy lifting, and then you bring in other people to basically oversee what's already been done. Because at what point would they have to continue to do? All they got to do is maintain, which does not require much. It goes on to say, according to CEPR study, black men are excluded from the workforce due to racist hiring practices, as well as being killed and imprisoned at higher rates than other groups. This doesn't just hurt black men and their families and communities. CEPR estimates that the lost income from the racial discrimination costs the overall U.S. economy $50 billion a year. So the U.S. economy is losing money based on racist practices. And this is not a new phenomenon. They've been doing this forever. So if you want to know why the U.S. continues to tank financially wise, it's because of racism. The people in power who hold all the cards and hold all the money are losing the money because of their racism. And look, it's falling, and it's because they're not hiring one group, and that's black men. So what does that tell you? That it's the hiring of black men that's driving the economy. But with them not doing it, it's decreasing the economy. Who knows? This could be why China is now usurped U.S. as the #1 wealthiest country in the world after the U.S. has held that position for how long? By focusing on closing the black-white jobs gap, we could add about $30 billion annually to black communities and make a significant reduction in black poverty, writes Algernon Austin, the author of the CEPR study. The figure jumps to $50 billion when factoring in black men of prime working age who die or are incarcerated. For that reason, as Austin told Insider, the unemployment rate is only part of the picture since it only captures people who are currently looking for work. The joblessness rate, or those who aren't working at all, is typically 3 times larger. Since we typically focus on the unemployment rate, we are missing the full impact of joblessness for black men. The unemployment rate for black men has never been low, Austin says. It would be more correct to characterize it as high, very high, or extremely high. While employers are calling the current labor conditions in the U.S. a shortage as they struggle to hire, black men of working age continue to have the highest unemployment rate of any gender or race. It's been that way for the past 2 decades throughout job market ups and downs. Experiments on hiring discrimination stretching back to the 1970s shows it happens from entry-level positions to job requiring a college degree. S. Michael Gaddis, a UCLA sociologist who studies employment discrimination, told Insider. Black job seekers face discrimination even when they have elite college degrees, such as one from Harvard or Stanford. The CEPR study found that although there are other groups that are typically face high unemployment and labor market discrimination, such as black women and other genders of color, those groups tend to rebound depending on the job's climate, while black men do not. So they're saying even black women can bounce back faster than black men when it comes to this. And it says other genders of color. Like I said, y'all know I don't like that POC, but I'm glad they decided to separate the two. Austin found that when the labor market is tight, for instance, black women's employment to population ratio becomes very similar to that of white women. Let me read that again. It says Austin found that when the labor market is tight, for instance, black women's employment to population ratio becomes very similar to that of white women. One major reason for black men not working is that many of them are incarcerated or die at a young age. Even before the pandemic, black people saw roughly 74,000 more deaths than their white counterparts between 2016 and 2018, according to a report from last February, for reasons like great infant mortality, environmental damage to black communities, and lower quality health care. In an examination of the 30 largest U.S. cities, despite the fact that they make up much less of the country's population. A Brookings Institute study from last March found that incarcerated black men account for 1/3 of all black men excluded from the labor force. And see, all of this is by design. Notice they keep mentioning deaths and incarceration. That is by design. And notice it's heavily hit on black men in specifically, rather than other men from other backgrounds, especially other white men or even other women or women in general. Looking at a statistic like imprisonment for drug use reveals the disparity. Black and white people use drugs at similar rates, according to the National Survey on Drug Use and Health. Yet the former are criminalized for it at much higher rates. Black people, who only represent 13% allegedly of the U.S. population, account for nearly 40% of the incarcerated for drug law and violations. Amid the pandemic, black Americans are also getting sick and dying at higher rates due to the pandemic's exacerbation of existing health inequities. But despite the prevalence of the thing, y'all know what I'm talking about, in the apparent market recovery, recent reports show that black Americans continue to see higher rates of joblessness. The CEPR report shows there is a wide pool of black Americans to hire. It's the self-evident discrimination in the labor market revealing itself. Dr. William Spriggs, an economics professor at Howard University and the chief economics for the AFL-CIO, told Insider in September. He added, the numbers this time are just startling. So when you, like I said, when you factor in all of what they just said, you know, jail incarceration and deaths, that plays a factor. But like I said, all of this is by design, especially that incarceration rate. It's all by design. If you took all of that away, that was a hindrance to black men. Imagine where we would be at right now. Just imagine. And then when you think about that video I did about the women getting that, was it the $850 per month? It's a whole design as to why they're doing that as well. And Professor Black Truth did a moment of truth about that a few days ago, where he was saying, like, that's the new gender war. Not just black men and black women getting online saying a whole bunch of stuff about each other, but using finances to further divide. Even though I think that was something that was already in place, but they're enhancing it. They're increasing it. They're taking it to new levels and new heights. But yeah, like I said, the economy would rather tank than to have black men work. Just like it would rather tank than to cut the checks. But that's the state of affairs in which we are living in. Like, this is who runs the nation. The same ones who run this nation run the world. And wonder why it's in shambles right now.